If you have never experienced a near suicidal depressive breakdown, I can tell you what it's like. I had one 5 years ago. Now, hopefully this isn't you, but looking back, I know it was the best thing that could have happened to me. Because up till then, I was just like every other clueless entrepreneur, maniacally focused on success, but ignoring all the signs, moving nonstop from one guru get-rich scheme to another, yet still completely in the dark about what I was supposed to do with my life. But as they say, that was then, this is now, and if you can hear my voice, then you and I both know we are ready to get serious about living the life we love, not just existing in it. But how do we do it? Join me as I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs just like you to learn their insider secrets, what's working now, and more importantly, what hasn't. All to help you, the struggling entrepreneur, decode what's keeping you stuck, enabling you to live better, accomplish more, and truly become the person you want to be. Hi, my name is Brian Forsyth, and welcome to Radically Unstuck. All right. Hey, welcome to Radically Unstuck. My name is Brian Forsyth. Welcome to the podcast. And I want to remind you, this is not just a podcast, this is a movement in the moment. The moment you decide to start living the life that you would gladly fight for. That's the purpose of this podcast. And I'm going to tell you, we have a fantastic guest today. His story is truly heartbreaking, amazing, life-fulfilling. He is absolutely going to shock you and hopefully help you start moving towards that life that you would gladly fight for. And with that, I want to bring on Oleg Lougheed. Mm-hmm. And if you would, Oleg, just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of why you do what you do.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your platform. And the other thing that I would like to give you credit is the pronunciation of the name. You nailed it. 100%. And it's a very rare thing to come across. And so I really do choose to embrace and celebrate the rather small victories in life that we can have.
Sure.
For me, the story and the experience and the background that I've had to this particular point of my life, it revolves around these themes of adversity and challenges and ultimately overcoming different obstacles and odds within my life. In fact, 3 years ago when I chose to start an organization, or as you described in your particular show notes, a movement, when I look at my life, I think of my life as overcoming odds. I think of my life as constantly being faced with different challenges and obstacles that I have to find ways to conquer and work through. And the biggest thing of all, to learn from. And that's the thing and the topic that you and I even discussed prior to hitting the record button for this particular show, is that I don't believe obstacles will ever go away.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe that as you continue to step into who you are and the journey that you're on right now, obstacles only get greater. What changed for me was that when I stepped onto this path of wanting to create a space for other people to be seen, to be heard, and to be appreciated, I realized that I started to view obstacles through a different lens. My relationship with adversity changed. I started to look at obstacles and challenges through the lens of, what am I here to learn? And what is this here to teach me? I think that's a very important point to start off this conversation with, because many of us have been impacted by COVID-19, by injustice, racial inequality. And so that question of what am I here to learn and what is this here to teach me helps reframe it in a way where we can continue to become students and be students of life. Because let's face it, in my opinion, life is the greatest teacher of all. The experiences that you're going to be given may or may not happen in any other way. And so when I look at my life and the experiences that I was given from a very young age, And that is being born in a relatively small town. I still call it small, but I think it's 1.5 million. The reason why I call it small is because I have memories of being able to go from one side of town to the other in 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, that is pretty small.
But that story and that journey beginning in a town in Russia called Chubarkul.
I'm glad I didn't have to.
For my first.
I'm glad I didn't have to pronounce that one.
But I've lived there for my first 12 years of my life. And what I've learned over those 12 years was that there were so many decisions and so many sacrifices that I had to make in order to get to this point. And that is understanding how you live in a household with an alcoholic mother, a father who was in prison at the time of my birth, and a sister who was 18 years older and was put in a position to become my legal guardian.
Oh,
Those
wow.
challenges alone put me in a constant state of transition. They put me in situations where navigating and learning as quickly as I can was not only in my best advantage, but it was sometimes the only thing that I had. So I had to figure it out. I had to figure out where I'm going to sleep that night. I had to figure out what I'm going to eat that day. But what I will say is this. Today I'm 27 years old, living in Austin, Texas. And I look back at those first 12 years, and I'm grateful for each and every single one of the moments. And the reason why is because I believe it is all the moments that make up who I am today. Therefore, each and every single one of those moments has a lesson that I can walk away with. So as I look at my birth mom, according to the societal standards, she was an alcoholic, therefore a bad person, someone who wasn't able to take care of me. But I look at her, and when I forgave her, what I realized was that she was one of the people that actually passed on one of the biggest lessons to who I am today. And that is the ability to never give up, never quit, keep going, no matter how difficult the challenge may be ahead of you. The reason why I shared that story is because there were so many times when I felt like I was a victim of the situations.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to look through that lens, as your show states quite clearly, that hero's journey. Looking at it through a different lens. And let's push that topic even farther, beyond the hero and the victim. Complete bystander. What would a person walking down the street think as they passed on a situation where there might have been verbal or physical abuse? What would they think that they know? And so in understanding all of these things and putting it into practice, what I realized was it's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of the lens that you're choosing to look at the situation from. You can look at it through the lens of, I was abused, I wasn't fed, or I can look at it through the lens of, I gained some serious lessons that for some of us takes a whole lifetime to learn.
Yeah, and I think that in order to be great in one way or the other, we have to learn those lessons, right? Like if you hadn't gone through what you went through,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you would be where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard. What I'm interested in is the process that, you know, like just a little bit of the process of how you got to that point, to that bridge where you're dealing with the horrors of this adoption, foster care, and then at some point your mindset shifted, and now you're Oleg, and you're doing TED Talks, and you've sort of turned the corner. So I'm curious what drove that. Like, was there a book, or did you just like sort of sat back and kind of considered it, or how did you arrive at that shift of perspective, so to speak?
It's a great question. The way that I would answer that, or the way that I understand it, is this way. It all started with my personal desire of wanting to change. It all started with that inner fire in knowing that it can be different. So when I speak about books or movies that have changed my life in particular and helped me see differently, the titles that come to mind include Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Rich Dad and Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The Alchemist.
Oh, I love that book. That's one of my favorites.
That book completely shifted my narrative and allowed me to understand that everything that I've been seeking and looking for, it's already within me. It's just that I haven't created or come across certain opportunities that can help me see those things, see that power within. Then what I chose to do is I chose to put it all into action. So to give you a better understanding of how I actually even read books, very rarely will I pick up a book and read it from cover to cover. Instead, I choose to read books in chapters because I believe that your life is in chapters. That's how it's told. So I'll read a chapter and then I'll try and implement it as fast as I can, whether it's in the form of a conversation or some action that I choose to take that day. The reason why I do that is because I learned that yes, knowledge is power, but I chose to take that step a little bit farther. Knowledge with action is power. Just knowing simple things in life, I don't think it actually is enough to get you wherever it is that you intend on going. You got to be able to put it into practice and understand it in a way that you are meant to understand it. So in reading those books and learning from those perspectives, that was a big first step in helping me understand that I truly can, no pun intended, think and grow rich through my experiences.
I think that
the other thing that made a difference was I watched a video recently that just made sense to me. It was a video of Oprah Winfrey. And in that video, one of the speeches that she talks about her younger self, and in particular the abusive relationship that she had faced. And she had said something that really stood out in my mind. And the reason why it stood out in my mind is because I believe that's how I actually look at the world. She said that when she was younger, she chose to believe in the possibility that the world could be different. The reason why that message stood out to me is because even in today's day and age, as I look at the world, I look at it through the lens of not what it is, but for what I aspire it to be. And I think there's a big difference between the
two. That's a powerful message. Because I know in my experience, I have been this information collector, whether it was books, whether it was courses, content. And, for the entrepreneur, somebody who's working towards, building this life, hopefully of service in some way, it's so easy to, sort of always be trying to find the next information.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate you highlighting this. It's really funny because I have a friend. I'm not going to mention his name because he's he wouldn't appreciate it. But I have a friend, and he's literally living in his car.
Mm-hmm.
He's been living in his car for. This is the sad part. He was living in his car for a year. He gets out of his car for 6 months. Things are happening. Things are awesome, et cetera, et cetera. Things happen, blah, blah, blah. He's back in his car. He's been in his car for approximately 9 months now, living in San Diego in his car. And he actually reads books like you do. Like he'll be reading like 7 books at a time because he's only reading, like these little bits, and then trying to work towards action. So all that's to say is I hope that the listener really takes this on, because if you really are trying to work towards the life that you want, it requires that one, thinking outside the box, this idea of not reading a book from cover to cover, because there's some people that say that a book is like an agreement, and if you start a book, then you finish a book. And thinking outside the box in this way, and even down to the how long it is after you consume the information that you actually are using it, I think that's powerful.
I also think that in regard to the book, here's one thing that I'll say is that what you said as far as some people thinking that a book is like an agreement, you finish it as soon as you pick it up. For me, I don't look at it through the lens, and here's why. I think books are there, as well as other forms of knowledge, to help you get to the next level or the next step. So if you received enough knowledge and information within that first chapter, even within that first word or within that first sentence, then that's a job well done from the resource point of view. And that's where I think it changes everything, in knowing that I just have to read this because I can't quit type of thing. And I committed to it. But looking at it possibly through a different lens as well, and thinking to yourself that, what was the intention? What was the purpose of me reading it to begin with? Was it to acquire a skill, a tool, a piece of information to help me move forward? And if I received that during the first sentence, first paragraph, first chapter, then could it be possible that maybe that was the purpose of that book?
That's something that it's interesting to think about it like that, to have like this, because that mindset is a mindset of intention, right? Which is also something that, this idea of living life with intention, and, and to what degree you're living it with intention. And I think that's another, it's always so fun doing these podcasts, because, the tiniest little thing, comes up, and it seems like it means so much. So hopefully somebody's listening to this, but, this idea of how much of your life are you living with intention, and would you say that the great lives, not necessarily the people that are rich, but the people that manage to do something with their life, would you say that intention is like the hallmark of a great life, right?
I would say that intention and attention are the hallmarks to a great life. Choosing where you put your focus and what you focus on is going to determine the trajectory that you take in this life. So if I'm putting all my focus and my energy on my words of not being able to make a financial living or be financially wealthy, then those are the things that I'm going to manifest. That's the beauty, I think, of even having to experience this particular journey that we all go through, and that is life, is the fact that words really do matter and words are powerful. So in moments of despair and adversity, I've learned this through my own experience. When I continue to repeat to myself that I'm broke, there's no way I will ever be able to do it, I can't believe it's happening, those are the things that I attracted more of than anything else.
Yeah.
And so I think that intention and intention part play a big role in just continue to remind yourself that challenging times will come. Life is full of ups and downs. One day you might be on an up, next day you might be on a down. You don't know when that day comes. You don't know which part of the day is going to be on an up and which part of the day is going to be on an down. The only thing that I think I do know is how I choose to react to one of those circumstances and situations. So focusing my attention on the possibility rather than the probability. And that is, in my case, as I look at my story, having come here at the age of 12, not speaking any English or barely enough to carry a conversation, and then hearing the statistics and the stories and the quote odds of me making through any situation that any child of my age would, were slim to none.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there is no similarity between even the English alphabet and the Russian alphabet. And so with that, I was already counted out in many of the conversations to be had. But what I realized was this, is that statistics is just someone else's experience. It's just someone else's story. And it doesn't have to be your story. You can have a different story as well, a different ending to that story.
Yeah, I think that's that point about statistics is so that's something that most people, it's so easy for people to quote statistics and many people like, oh, it's, then statistics are like, it's written down in stone somewhere, and how could that be wrong? And that's so true, that that statistics are, it's really the, you can take you can take information and bend it the way you want. Have you ever studied logic, like the actual like the rules of logic and all of that kind of stuff?
No, I have not yet, at least.
So you can, I took I'm not a logic master by any means, but I took like Logic 1 in college. And so you actually learn how to take something that says like, the walls are black, and spin it around to say that the walls are gray. Like the rules of logic, by taking and the really weird thing is you can graph a paragraph or a sentence or whatever in these logic symbols, and it's really weird because you could take something 2 + 2 = 4, and through the rules of logic you can make it say 2 + 2 = 5 essentially. And that sort of informs the truth of statistics, and and also what is fact. Things get really fuzzy when you start talking about fact and opinion, and talking about the what the climate we have in this country right now. I think that's important to remember, to do your own research, to look and see, and also make your own evaluation. And I feel like people tend to not want to make their own evaluation. And so we kind of become dependent on statistics and,
Well, let's also face the fact that we're living in 2020 with access to probably every piece of information that we aspire for through all these different forms of social media and the internet. The internet completely changed the game. And what I'm learning now is because everything is so accessible, maybe there is a tendency for some of us to be more dependent on others when it comes to that information, because you no longer have to think. If the information is there, what's the point of thinking? What's the point of even having a conversation like this when you can talk about the possibility of 2 plus 2 being 5 and not 4 in some situations other than basic arithmetic? So I think there's a lot to be said in regard to the ability to think outside the box, problem solve, and understand that critical thinking doesn't only come in one form. I think for the longest time, I even believed this, because that's what I was taught, was that the way to attain critical thinking was to go to college. That somehow that diploma and that 4-year experience, for those of us that are fortunate to finish it in 4 and not 5 or 6, is going to give you or guarantee you the ability to think critically. When in reality, what I realized after graduating was that college is just one form where you can receive critical thinking. It's not the form. You can receive the tools for critical thinking through everyday conversations, just like the one you and I are having right now. It's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of what are you there to learn? What's the mindset? And what's the lens that you're looking at this conversation through? I may be in this conversation. My lens is, what is Brian here to teach me? What can I learn from his experience? How can I apply it moving forward within my everyday, day-to-day life? So I think there's a lot to be said in regard to what you just pointed out, and that's the ability to question your surroundings and know that there is no ultimate truth to anything. At least that's my opinion of it. The truth is whatever you believe to be true. And that, in my opinion, once again, I think it's meant to evolve, just like any other subject in life. When you think about love, what is love? It varies. The love from a child to a parent, the love from a partner to a partner, the love from myself to my dog. Very different types of love. Therefore, there is no ultimatum to any of it, because it depends on the experience and the entities involved. So I think this ability, once again, to question your surroundings and know that, yes, you might be a byproduct of the people and the influences that are around you, but you have a choice in which of those you act upon and which of those you just simply let go and keep going.
I think you bring up a really powerful point, which is this questioning. And it's one of the things that I talk about a lot, questioning and asking, especially, when it comes to your thoughts. And, because I had a near suicidal, depressive breakdown 5 years ago. And so, one of the purposes of this show is to, always kind of bring out the validity and the truth and the reality of depression and sort of, just kind of always bring that up just to kind of, do what I can to break the stigma of depression. And questioning is so important when you're dealing with depression. Questioning, what I talk about, the inner garden. What kind of thoughts are you allowing to propagate in your head? And I wonder whether, in all of your experiences, did you deal with depression while you were, moving through?
Absolutely. Probably deal with depression even today. I don't think that depression ever goes away. I think what changes is your relationship with it
Yeah.
and how you choose to move forward throughout it. I mean, think about it this way: being introduced to a new country, not knowing how to speak the language, not knowing a single friend that you can talk to, barely understanding how to communicate with your parents. I think that's every reason in the book for me that I could think of for why I might have been depressed.
Yes. So
It's hard to know that when you don't fit in, it's a challenge. And so I think for me, once again, what changed was as I became more immersed into the culture and learned the language and everything else that this country has to offer, I realized that depression, sadness, joy, because those are natural human emotions, they're always going to be there. Always. They're never going to leave. There's nothing I can do, I believe, in my lifetime that is going to completely eliminate them. Because here's the thing, as one of my friends had mentioned this many times, life is like an onion. Every emotion is like an onion. That as soon as you get through one layer of depression, all that means is there's going to be the next one.
yeah, it's yeah, I really appreciate you saying that about depression, because that's one of the reasons why I continue to kind of bring that up, because what can happen is someone can deal with depression and then come out of it, and or like they're in a deep depression, and so they come out of it, and then they sort of think, it's really easy to say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that's done with, that's over. And so they stop paying attention, to the thoughts and to the feelings, because they're so glad to be over it. And that's one of the things that I'm always trying to get people to pay attention to, which is, you're right. In my experience, depression doesn't go away, but our relationship to it and what I call the triggers that it uses, you can take those away. And if you can really get very good at paying attention versus sort of turning away from it, if you can make it like what I call it, my science experiment, where I like watched it and paid real close attention to its triggers, and then lessen those one after the other, then eventually you can just like kind of shrink it down until it that's kind of where you're at. It's kind of just shrunk down into so listener, it is possible, and we're not saying it's easy. It's not easy. But
nothing ever is, right?
Nothing that's going to teach us, is ever going to be easy. And speaking of easy, speaking of teaching, I know that there was something specific that you wanted to bring to us, something that's very, very dear to your heart, and so go ahead and talk with us about that.
For me, what that is a question that I choose to look at adversity and all these other challenging moments with, and that is, what am I here to learn? What is this here to teach me? I think what's been interesting throughout COVID-19 and everything else that we've experienced as not only a town, a country, but ultimately as the world, with all of these adversities and what appear to be setbacks to some, I chose to look at a completely different lens, and that is, what is this here to teach us? And it's an acquired skill, 100%. It's not something that I learned over day. It took me many years. to understand. But what I realized was the importance of looking at every situation through that lens and learning from it as much as I can, and understanding that each adversity is going to bring with it, I believe, an equal opportunity. And that is an opportunity for you to create a world completely different to the one that the adversity might present to you. And I think that's a beautiful thing and a beautiful perspective to look at, in my opinion, because it reaffirms me that there's progress that can be made, even within the challenging time. There's growth that I can experience. There's transformation that I can go through.
Yeah, I think that even with everything that's going on, and there's huge problems, and people are ill, and people are dying, and that's harsh and that's hard, and nobody's nobody's negating any of that, but
right.
But I think we are seeing this reorganization and this redefinition, and I think many of us are finding some a bit more peace, like in the difference that we're having to deal with.
Yeah.
There's this returning to a simpler life and a less full life, and for some that's scary, and obviously that has real problems in the life. But if you can step back and see it and kind of assimilate that,
yeah,
then I think that moves civilization just a little bit closer to a better form.
Yeah.
And so, talking about a better form, and we talked about different books that you've read, and so what would you 5 years ago, where were you? What was going on 5 years ago? If you could look back and think, like, where were you as far as like your headspace, and what would you tell that person 5 years ago, if you could?
5 years ago, I was probably just beginning the transformation, the next chapter of my life, the stepping into purpose, the stepping into meaning, the understanding that there's meaning within suffering. That's where I was as I chose to step into this space and these experiences and know that there was purpose and meaning that can be articulated through all of them. So Overcoming Odds is the organization that I started 3.5, maybe even closer to 4 years ago by now, with the intention of creating that space for people to be seen and to be appreciated through their stories and experiences. And so when I look back at that journey of 5 years ago, that's when I had developed enough courage to step into that space and know that I can be of value to other people and of service to other people. So if there's anything that I could pass on to people as far as closing statements to the conversation that you and I had today, it is never give up. There's always a way as long as there's a will. I firmly believe that. Whoever said that really spoke to me in volumes, in fact. And I believe that wholeheartedly because my life has been that. My life has given me enough opportunities to look at whatever the adversities may be and help me understand that as long as I keep going, I'll keep finding that way.
That's beautiful. That's why we're here, right? That's why we do this podcast, so that you could tell that person that's out there right now that just keep going, man. If you need help, please reach out
Yeah,
and get
ask for
help.
help.
Let people help you, right? Like that's Oleg didn't get here without help. I want to absolve whoever's listening of this idea that people who live amazing lives doing amazing things, no man is an island, and you don't have to be an island. Reach out, especially, the reason why, one of the main reasons I do this podcast is to help men in particular understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to reach out and, and get help and say, I have a problem. And, I forget the statistics, but they're really bad when it comes to depression and suicide. And men in particular, listen, please, let people help you, build a network, and don't give up, because a better life is available, and nobody said it's easy, but we're saying it's possible.
Yeah.
Oleg's telling you it's possible, and believe me, most of us have never lived through the hell that Oleg has seen. And we didn't even get to talk about the fact that you were Russian in America, trying to I can imagine. Never mind the fact, if you had been like just a foster kid and you were from like Mexico or something, that's one thing. But
right.
But being Russian is like being Chinese. Those two realities. I can only imagine that made things just a tad bit more challenging. And I'm so glad you made it through, and that you're doing this amazing work. And speaking of this amazing work, if we want to find out more about what you're doing and the foundation that you've started, what are your contact details, so to speak?
The best way that people can connect with a lot of the work that we do, and that's simply typing in Overcoming Odds on almost every single platform you can think of, and you'll be able to find different opportunities for you to share your story, for you to tune into some of the conversations that we have through similar medium that you and I are talking through, and that is a podcast. And then beyond that, we host events. We used to host in-person events. A lot of it has transitioned to virtual now. And then one other thing that we do on a consistent basis is every single Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time, we host a Zoom call free of charge for members of our community to talk about a topic that is relevant to our lives and have a discussion amongst however many people that choose to join every week, and shift our own perspective through the collective of others. Personally, LinkedIn is the place where you can find me and connect with me, and I encourage you to do so, whether it's just sharing your experience, picking my brain, or whatever it may be. I'm here to help. I'm here to support in whatever way that I can.
All right. And that is awesome. That's amazing. That is life fulfilling. And this has been a wonderful podcast. I can't thank you enough for being on, Oleg. And the only thing I have to say is, like I say every podcast, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you have a thought, if you have an emotion that is not something that you would want your mother or your best friend to think or feel, then I encourage you to consider whether it's useful, not whether it's true. True is not the point. It doesn't matter whether it's true. It matters whether it's useful. Is that going to bring you farther or further away, closer? to where you're trying to go. I want you to practice radical self-love. No matter your history, no matter your struggles, radical self-love, the ability to love yourself despite truth. And I hope that you can do that. And with that, Oleg, I thank you again for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And with that, peace, everybody.